One of the most frequent questions that I get asked is, how did you get into this business? And my smart aleck response is, well, nothing else worked, which is kind of true. I often say, well, no, I've never actually said this, but it's in my notes if I'm ever to write a book. But I say the road to success is paved with many failures. And boy, I've got a lot of blacktop. I've told the story before about the online motorcycle business that was an epic failure. And after that, I was left with about $120,000 in debt as a 19, 20-year-old kid with no real appreciable skills, marketable skills. I was applying for every job on the planet. I was applying for like third shift dispatcher, for 911. I remember an interview I went in, I think it was a newspaper one, but it's one of these signs you might see on the side of the road where you just call a number and they're hiring people. And I think it was sort of for a sales position, but I go into this rented office building with no signs on it and get interviewed by this guy who I think smoked about 4 cigarettes during the course of the interview, and probably did a lot of cocaine in the 80s and maybe still does, talking about my skills and stuff like that. And he's giving compliments and he's like, yeah, we'd love to have you. And I was like, I don't even know what job this is. Like, I'm pretty sure it's like a door-to-door vacuum salesman. And at that point I left because I'm like, I don't know what company this is. I don't know what job. This is super weird. But anyway, great stroke of luck. I applied for and landed a job selling Land Rovers, which I thought was super cool because I'm a car guy. And, what better thing to do than sell the cars that you have on your wall as a poster? I was really interested in them and pretty excited that dealership would give me a chance. It was actually a lot of fun. I started in the fall. That meant I got to take customers on test drives in the winter, and the new LR3 had just come out, and they had I think the terrain response system, the snow and ice mode. It was an awesome, awesome car in the winter. So literally I got paid to take customers out and do donuts and show them how the system worked, and it would sell the car. And it was pretty lucrative. It was definitely the most money I'd ever made in my short career, but it didn't come without its headaches and some internal politics, and that's ultimately what drove me out of working for somebody else and into my own business. One of those things was the dress code. They had this thing called the Land Rover Way, and everything about how you present the vehicles, your product knowledge, how you dress, et cetera, had to be part of this Land Rover Way. The stores were all decorated in kind of outback motif, and it was really, really cool because you could wear cargo pants to work. But I got in trouble one time for wearing pelotes. The son of the owner had a serious PhD. We call it Papa Had a Dealer. He had that syndrome where he was kind of spoiled, kind of a lot spoiled, and he would poke his head up here and there and tell people to do things, whether or not he had the authority to do so. And a lot of people did not like him. I was one of them that got on his bad side. So he gave me all sorts of crap and wrote me up for wearing pelotes. And I'm like, they're car shoes. And he's like, well, we don't sell cars, we sell SUVs. And I'm like, so I can wear hiking boots to work, but not pelotes. Like, I'm pretty sure guys that buy Range Rovers also have Ferraris, and like, this is all like, people appreciate it, but whatever, got in trouble for that. But in the midst of this, I was kind of forming my own career, laying the groundwork, because I was buying domain names that had to do with what we sold. So like Land Rover Center and some other domain names, set up my own email address. They gave me control over the company website. So I diverted the leads to my own Gmail or whatever it was address that I had set up. And so I was actually generating my own leads. I'm running Google ads for Land Rover sales, getting them to come into the website, and I had all the control over this, and it was fantastic. Until the other salesman left, and we hired this guy that came from Serpentini Chevrolet, which people from Ohio will know the name Serpentini. It is your typical kind of sleazeball reputation car dealer. The owner wears the alligator shoes. He brags about how much money he has. He's a real piece of work from my personal experience with him. This guy came in and he was the typical car salesman, starched white shirt and, dress pants from Ross Dress for Less. He had never used a computer in his life because at the Chevy dealer, they, tied his hands. He basically got business cards and a chair and, a pen, and he could do the Foursquare with customers, and everything else was, I got to talk to the manager. I got to talk to the manager. I'm running essentially the whole internet department from scratch on my own. And this guy comes in never having used a computer. I set up an email address for him. I taught him how to use email. He's still doing this typing thing. And, I'm doing this because, right, we're supposed to be team players. We all help each other out, small dealership, whatever. Well, that backfired big time because after a little bit, he decided that he didn't like that I sold a car off of eBay, that he got like a phone up for something and he could have sold it and I sold it instead. And so the dealership turned it into a split deal or a house deal or whatever you want to call it, which is when they basically just say, okay, well, there's no salesman on this, so we're going to split the commission. I was justifiably super upset. I said, well, how about this? I'm doing all the internet stuff. I did all this stuff. This guy didn't even know how to use email, and I trained him on it, and now he wants to take part of the internet stuff. Like, I don't like that. There's an economic term called specialization of labor, which is where you put the best people in the best role. I said, I'll do all the internet stuff. I will not take a phone call unless it's related to something I've put out there. He can take every single phone up. He can take every single person that walks in. I don't care. I'll never talk to anybody. Put me in the back closet. They didn't like it. Nope, you guys got to work as a team. I'm like, yeah, screw this. So that spelled the beginning of the end. Going back to my earlier interactions with the son of the owner, I was down in the BMW store one time, and I don't remember why or what, but he was giving me crap for something else. And I had about had it with the organization at this point, and everybody kind of walked on eggshells around him. But I'm not the type of person to do that. And I just remember he said something about, I don't know, a shirt I was wearing or some way that I was doing things. And I looked him right in the eye. I said, you don't like it? Then fire me. Because one, I knew he couldn't. And two, at that point, I didn't care because they were stealing my commissions for internet stuff and giving them to Mr. Start Shirt, can't type an email. I just remember like everybody in the BMW store, all the salesmen, there was just like a collective because nobody had ever stood up to him like that. And nothing happened, but that kind of signaled that this was time for me to be done. So I started working on an exit strategy, figuring out what I was going to do next. And I put in my 2 weeks notice. And in the history of that dealership, I was the only salesman to actually work their 2 weeks since they put in notice. Usually they would just walk you right out the door because of the liability, but I actually finished out my 2 weeks. And because they had nobody that had any clue about internet, I was still getting leads from their website because it went to my email address for months and months after that, and still had access to log into Land Rover's system. So it was a nice jumpstart for my business when the Range Rover Sport came out and I was selling allocations for those. I could log in and see who had them, where they were coming in, et cetera, et cetera. So I would actually continue selling cars for this Land Rover dealership and just lining up deals and handing them to them and getting a fee from the customer because the sales manager was pretty awesome and realized it was a net benefit to him. But I remember that one of the guys that came in to interview as my replacement, young guy about my age, 20 something, and comes in wearing a full pinstripe suit. And I just look at him, I'm like, that dude's not getting hired. That is not the Land Rover way. You are way too overdressed. That was the time that I decided that I needed to go out on my own. And I did have a meeting with the owner of the dealership before I left and said, hey, I'd be interested in doing subcontracting for you guys. So if you want to retain me to run your marketing, I'll be happy to do that. And they were interested, but the offer they gave me was a pittance. So I said, screw that. I'm going to go out on my own. And that is what springboarded me into the used car business. So I think a lot of people often see it as, oh, you just started selling cars with no money. You started in your apartment. Yes, kind of true. But I did start at a dealership. I learned the ropes in that 5 months that I worked there. I had such a great sales manager. I was thankful to learn really the entire scope of selling cars. We would write leases by hand. He taught us how they worked. We would do all of our own, F&I, our finance paperwork, everything. We'd do the deal from front to back. So got a better idea of the operations than like my counterpart, Mr. Start Shirt, that just knew how to do the Foursquare. So that was a great crash course in the car business and what got me, I guess, addicted to it. There's no going back from there.
We'd like to thank Glossit for supporting the VINwiki channel this month, and right now Glossit is offering the best DIY ceramic coating package that we've ever seen or certainly offered here on VINwiki. For just $69.99, you're going to get their graphene ceramic coating along with the Real Difference Maker, their ceramic detail spray. Now that's a $50 bottle of spray detailer that I truly love just for daily use, but when you use that alongside their graphene ceramic coating, it makes the removal a lot easier, the outcome a lot smoother, you avoid high spots and things like that. So a DIY idiot like me in my own garage can achieve an outcome pretty similar to what Rich and his team were able to do last year on the Paris Hilton SLR, which I eventually torture tested on rallies and road trips and all this stuff, and it is now in Bulgaria, still looking wonderful. So check it out now at the link in the description below. There's a very limited quantity, so respond now and get yours for just $69.99. Thanks, Glossit.